He left when I was 11. The first job I got was digging holes big enough to bury him in. Mom said he went to find himself. Said it like he just gone to the corner store and got lost between the cereal aisle and the beer cooler. In reality, he ran off with a waitress from the I-75 diner, the one with hair like rusted wire and a laugh that made my skin itch. Last we heard, they were headed west in a '78 Buick LeSabre with mismatched doors and a cracked windshield that whistled in the rain. He left behind his toolbox, 3 pairs of dirty boots, and a fridge full of cheap beer. And me. I dropped out of school at 16. Not because I was stupid, I read more than most kids I knew, but because the bills didn't pay themselves and Mom had started falling asleep in front of the TV with the oven still on. Greenwood Cemetery was the only place that didn't ask too many questions. You showed up sober, you worked until your shirt was soaked through, and you went home with enough cash to keep the lights on. The first time I dug a grave, I puked behind a row of dogwoods. Something about the mix of sweat, diesel, and freshly turned earth hit wrong in the back of my throat. Walt, the groundskeeper, didn't say a word. Just handed me a flask of something sharp and said, "Sip, don't swig. You'll get used to it." Walt was 73, a Korean war vet with a back shaped like a question mark and hands like tree bark. He'd been working the cemetery since before I was born. Never talked much unless he was angry or drunk, and sometimes both. But he taught me everything. How to measure out a plot with nothing but 2 sticks and a string. How to tell when a coffin was coming in too light. How to listen to people cry without turning it into a performance. "Grief ain't a parade," he'd say. "It's a goddamn whisper. So shut your mouth and listen." That first year, I learned more than I ever did in school. Things like, wear thick socks in winter or your toes will rot. Don't whistle in the graveyard, even if you don't believe in ghosts. Always carry extra gloves. And if a man breaks down at his wife's funeral, don't pat his shoulder. Let him break. There was one funeral I remember clear, February, cold enough that the dirt came up in bricks. The woman was young, barely 30. "Cancer," someone whispered. Her husband stood there, holding a toddler in a puffy pink coat, her mittens tied to her sleeves like wings. He never cried. Just stared at the casket like he was trying to solve a riddle no one had the answer to. After they left, I stayed behind. Cleaned up the folding chairs, packed up the green fake grass that's supposed to hide the dirt like grief's something you can cover up. Walt leaned on his shovel and looked at me like he was seeing through me. "You ever wonder if he blames the kid?" It hit me like a shovel to the chest. Because I had wondered that. About me. If maybe I'd made it too hard for Dad to stay. Too loud, too needy, too much like the mirror he didn't want to look into. But Walt didn't ask to pry. Just to say it out loud, so it didn't eat me alive from the inside. Walt smoked filterless Pall Malls and smelled like turpentine and black coffee. He never married. Said war cured him of romance. But he had a way of making you feel like you weren't just a set of hands swinging a pickaxe. He knew when to talk and when to keep his mouth shut. That, I learned, was the rarest kind of wisdom. There was a rhythm to it. Death comes in waves. You get busy around holidays, oddly enough. Something about people holding on until New Year's or letting go after Thanksgiving. Spring, too. Walt said it's the thaw that does it, gets into the bones. Sometimes families come by to visit. The old-timers mostly, stooped and quiet, leaving flowers that freeze to the granite. I used to make up stories about the names on the stones. John H. Carter, 1924 to 1995. Maybe he was a jazz musician. Maybe he cheated on his taxes. Maybe he told his daughter every night that she was the best thing that ever happened to him. Maybe she never believed it. That's the thing about graves. They don't tell you what kind of man someone was. Just when they started and when they stopped. 2 years into the job, I could dig a grave in under 4 hours. Clean, no cave-ins. I could lower a coffin without a sound and say, "I'm sorry for your loss," without flinching. I stopped puking. I stopped wondering when Dad would call. Stopped thinking about what I'd say if he did. Then, One Monday morning in late August, Walt handed me a slip of paper. A death notice. He didn't say a word. Just nodded toward the name on it. Daniel Joseph Foster Sr. I read it 3 times before it sank in. My hands went cold. My mouth felt full of dirt. He died in defiance, Walt said. Heart failure. I stared at the name. My name minus the junior. He's coming here? Walt nodded. Friday. I didn't ask who arranged it. Didn't care. The man left when I still had baby teeth. Now I was supposed to bury him like it was just another job. Walt lit a cigarette and looked out over the graves. You don't have to do it. But I did. I needed to. Because I had things to say. Not out loud, God, no, but with my hands, with the way I dug that earth, with the way I folded the sod back like it mattered. The son he left behind was the one putting him in the ground. And that had to mean something. Walt told me to take the day off. Said he'd cover for me, that maybe it wasn't a good idea to be the one holding the shovel when your old man goes into the dirt. But I showed up anyway. I showed up early. The sun hadn't cleared the trees yet, and everything was wet with that August dew that clings to your boots like the earth doesn't want to let go. I opened the shed, took out the spade, and walked to plot 94 without looking back. The grass was long there, waiting for something. Me, maybe. I took my time. Measured twice. Cut clean. There's a way to slice the ground so it opens like it's supposed to. It's a respect thing, Walt said. You don't hack at it. You ask it to open. That morning, I wasn't just asking. I was digging for every moment he missed, every game, every fever, every night I asked Mom when he was coming home. I didn't say a word. Just worked. Let my shoulders do the talking. By 10, the hole was done. 6 feet down, square, clean edges. I sat at the edge with a thermos of lukewarm coffee and waited. Didn't know what I was waiting for. Closure? Forgiveness? A sign? None of that showed up. What did show up was the hearse. It rolled in slow, like it was trying not to wake the dead. I didn't recognize the driver. Didn't recognize the woman who got out after him, either. She was maybe 30, maybe older. Wore a black dress that clung to her like mourning was something she wore well. Her eyes landed on me and stayed there. You Danny? Yeah. She nodded. I'm Claire. Your sister. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A hard, dry sound. Didn't know he had another kid. Neither did I, she said. Turns out, after he left us, he started over. New town. New job. New family. Same man underneath, though. Ran when Claire was 10. Only difference was, she got to know him for a little while longer. Just long enough to miss him. Just long enough to hate him different. The service was small. Just her, some guy I figured was a boyfriend, and a priest who mispronounced our last name. No one cried. No one spoke. When they asked if I wanted to say anything, I shook my head. What was there to say? He was here, then he wasn't. He was a shadow. A name I inherited and carried like a wound. Now he was ash and muscle and old regrets, boxed up in polished wood. We lowered him slow. Claire touched the casket once. I didn't. After they left, I stayed. Walt came up behind me, quiet like always. Handed me a beer. Warm, but I drank it anyway. You did right, he said. Did I? He nodded. You put him in the ground. With care. That's more than he gave you. I didn't answer. Just watched the sun fall through the trees like God was closing a curtain. Later that week, Claire called. Said she found a box of letters he'd written but never sent. One had my name on it. I met her at a diner off I-90. She slid the envelope across the table like it might bite. I held it for a long time. Didn't open it. Just stared at my name in handwriting I barely remembered. He wrote like a man trying to convince himself of something. Finally, I opened it. Inside were 4 pages. Rambling, half-drunk thoughts about guilt and time and how he thought he was doing the right thing, leaving. Said he didn't want to be a burden. Said he thought we'd be better off. I read it twice. Then I folded it up, put it in my jacket, and never read it again. Some wounds don't close. You just learn to stop picking at them. Back at the cemetery, life went on. Graves got dug. Rain came. Grass grew. One afternoon, Walt didn't show up. I called. No answer. Drove by his place. Found him on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, cigarette burned down to the filter. He looked smaller somehow. Like the weight of his years finally caught up. Doc says my ticker's bad, he said. Wants me to quit. I didn't ask if he meant the smokes or the job. We both knew it was both. That winter, I started running the place on my own. Ordered supplies. Talked to the families. Dug the holes. Sometimes I'd talk to the dead. Tell them about the Browns game. About how Claire and I met up every few months now. About how Mom was still alive, still watching soap operas like they held the meaning of life. I told them about the man I buried. My father. How he left 2 kids with the same jawline and the same haunted look. How I didn't forgive him. But I buried him anyway. Because somebody had to. Walt hung on longer than I thought he would. He kept showing up now and then, bundled in layers, shuffling slow, like every step cost him something. He didn't dig anymore, just supervised from a folding chair under the old pine tree. He'd bark corrections now and then, always with a cigarette trembling in his fingers. I think he just didn't want to die at home. The dead don't need me, he said once. But the dirt does. I didn't know what he meant until much later. By spring, I'd learned to fill silence with purpose. When grief walked in, I knew not to rush it. I kept Kleenex in my back pocket, and a poker face better than any funeral director in town. Greenwood became something like sacred ground to me, not holy, not divine, just honest. I started noticing things. Like how people stand when they're saying goodbye, how some face the grave head on, and some turn sideways, like they can't look lost in the eye. I kept a mental list of the ones who came back after the funeral, weeks later, to just sit and talk to a stone. Those were the ones who carried the weight deep. Claire came by sometimes. Always with black coffee and some story about our dad that made me question what I thought I knew. Apparently, he used to write poetry. Terrible stuff, full of rhymes like love and dove. But still, the image of him scribbling on napkins in a truck stop booth made him feel more human, and less like a ghost who happened to donate DNA. One day she brought a photo, him holding her as a baby, looking like he hadn't yet learned how to be absent. I stared at it for a long time. His hands looked steady. His eyes almost kind. He could be sweet, Claire said, setting the cup down. When he wanted to be. I didn't know what to do with that. My memory of him was all slammed doors and cigarette smoke. But her version, softer, sadder, started to crowd in. That night, I found the letter again. Pulled it from the inside pocket of my winter coat. The paper was still folded into 4 soft creases, ink faded at the edges. I didn't read it. Just held it. The next morning, Walt was gone. His chair was still under the pine. A butt still smoldering in the tray beside it. But he wasn't there. I found out later he passed in his sleep. No fuss. Just went out like a light bulb finally giving in to the dark. The cemetery felt different after that. Quieter somehow. Like it was holding its breath. I dug Walt's grave myself. Wouldn't let anyone else touch it. Took me twice as long, not because it was harder, but because I kept stopping. Remembering things. The first time he showed me how to oil a chain. The time he yelled at me for laughing during a service, not knowing the man in the box was his cousin. The day he let me call him something like a father, and didn't flinch. He didn't have much family. A niece in Akron sent flowers. No one spoke at the service. So I did. I stood there in boots caked in mud, dirt under my nails, and I told the dozen empty chairs that Walt taught me everything my father didn't. How to show up. How to shut up. How to keep your word. And then I said thank you? When I filled the grave in, I took my time. Pressed the earth smooth. Folded the sod like he'd taught me. Made it look like no one had ever been there. That was the last grave I dug by hand. After Walt, things changed. The city brought in machines, part of some cost-efficiency initiative. The new guy, Travis, was fresh out of community college and wore sunglasses even on cloudy days. He called it a gig, like we were playing bass at a bar. He didn't last long. People still died. Plots still got filled. But something about the rhythm was off without Walt. I started thinking about leaving. About maybe going back to school. About what it meant to stay rooted in a place filled with endings. Then one morning, a kid showed up. 16, skinny, eyes full of questions he didn't know how to ask. Said his name was Marcus. Said his uncle knew someone who used to work here, Walt. He needed a job. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw myself, all bones and silence, standing outside that same shed 10 years ago. I handed him a shovel. First rule, I said, is you never whistle in a graveyard. Got it? He nodded. Why? Because the dead deserve peace, I said. And because Walt said so. We started digging. Marcus didn't say much for the first few weeks. Just showed up on time, kept his head down, and did what I told him. There was something in his eyes, though, a kind of quiet hunger, the way you look when you're waiting for someone to tell you who you are. One day, I found him sitting by Walt's grave after his shift. Just sitting there, back against the stone, legs stretched out like he was waiting for the old man to start talking. You miss him? He asked as I walked up. Every day. Did he teach you how to do all this? Most of it. Marcus looked down at his boots, scuffed and too big. Feels like maybe I came too late. I didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked out over the cemetery, the way the rose caught the last bit of sun like teeth in a crooked grin. Walt believed the dead could teach us more than the living, if we knew how to listen, I said. So maybe you're not too late. Maybe you're right on time. He nodded, like he didn't believe me but wanted to. I started showing him the small things. How to cut a grave clean. How to brace the walls if the ground was wet. How to keep your shoulders square when the casket comes down, no matter how heavy the grief hanging off it. He learned fast. The way I did. Not because he had a knack for it, but because he needed it. Work like that. It makes room inside you, clears space that grief or rage or whatever you can't name used to fill. One night after a long day, we sat on the tailgate of the truck, sharing a sandwich and a bottle of Coke. The air smelled like lilacs and gasoline. You think your dad would have liked this place? Marcus asked. I didn't answer right away. Took a long sip, stared out at the headstones. No, I said. But I think he would have respected it. Eventually. Marcus chewed that over like he wasn't sure if it was a good thing or not. You ever talk to him? Like at his grave? Sometimes. When the day's quiet enough. What do you say? Depends, I said. Sometimes I tell him about Mom. Sometimes I tell him I hope he's found whatever he was looking for. Sometimes I just sit and say nothing. There was a long silence after that. Then Marcus asked, Do you think it matters? What we say? I thought of Walt, sitting under the pine. Of Claire, lighting candles on Dad's birthday. Of the man with the toddler in the pink coat. Of all the people who showed up, year after year, just to stand and remember. Yeah, I said. I think it does. That summer was hot. Too many burials, not enough rain. The ground cracked in places, like the earth was grieving too. I taught Marcus how to pace himself, how to lift with his legs, how to read the air for storms. He never complained, even when the blisters came. One morning, we buried a boy his age. Car crash. Whole town showed up. Football jersey draped over the casket like a flag. After everyone left, Marcus didn't move. Just stood at the grave, shovel still in his hands. I didn't know him, he said. But it feels like I lost something. You did, I said. That's the trick of it. When someone dies, they take something from all of us. He looked at me, eyes glassy. How do you carry it? Same way you dig, I said. 1 foot at a time. That night, I dreamed of Walt. He was younger in the dream, back straight, hands clean. He didn't say anything. Just tipped his hat and turned back to the shed, like he'd been waiting for me to catch up. I woke up with the feeling that I'd missed something. Like maybe the real lesson wasn't in the digging. Maybe it was in the staying. That weekend, Claire brought me a folder. Said she found it in a storage unit Dad had rented. It was full of old receipts, photographs, some court paperwork. And at the very bottom, a birthday card addressed to me. Never opened. Never sent. Inside was $10, and a note that said, "For your first set of tools. I'll make it up to you next year. Love, Dad." I stared at it a long time. Then I gave the 10 to Marcus. "Get yourself a better pair of gloves," I said. He looked confused. "What for?" "For the next grave," I said. "Because they always came. And someone always had to dig." Marcus kept the gloves, but he never used the $10. Said he'd hold on to it like it meant something. Like it connected him to a story he wasn't born into, but still somehow belonged to. "Feels like blood money," he joked once. "Or ghost money." He was getting good. Could dig clean and quick, read a funeral crowd like a weather vane. He started showing up early, staying late. Some days I'd find him sitting under Walt's tree, sketching grave markers. Said he liked the shapes, the way the lines softened with time. "Most people think granite's forever," he said. "But even stone gets tired." That fall, the cemetery flooded. A pipe burst under the west end, turned the whole area into soup. Graves caved in. Grass peeled back like scalp. I had to call families. Explain. Offer apologies that felt thinner than the envelopes I mailed them in. Marcus helped me fix it. We worked by lantern light some nights, hauling sandbags, resetting headstones. He didn't complain once. One night, knee-deep in mud, I looked at him and said, "You ever think about doing something else?" He looked around like he needed help understanding the question. "Like what?" I didn't know. Still don't. The only life I'd ever known was between rows of stone and sod. But sometimes, late at night, I'd wonder what it'd be like to build something instead of bury it. "I dunno," I said. "Just wondered if this was enough for you." Marcus looked back at the grave we just fixed. It was clean now, polished, name readable again. "I think it's more than enough," he said. "This place, it matters." He was right. It did. It still does. One weekend, Claire brought her daughter to visit. Little thing, maybe 6, named Nora. She wandered through the rows like they were a forest, made just for her. Asked about every name, every statue. "Why are there angels?" she asked. "Some people think they help guide the dead," I said. "Where to?" I knelt down beside her. "Wherever they need to go." She pointed to one stone, all moss and chipped marble. "Who was this?" "Don't know. Been gone a long time." She looked up at me. "Do you think someone still loves them?" God, that question. I didn't answer. Not right away. Just stood there as the wind picked up and the smell of wet leaves settled over everything. "I hope so," I finally said. "Because love, even buried under time and silence, has roots." After they left, I stood alone in the middle of Greenwood and thought about my dad again. Thought about Claire. Thought about the card, the $10, the tools I never got. I realized then I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't forgive him either. But hate had burned out. Left something quieter in its place. Understanding, maybe? Or just exhaustion. The dead don't owe us answers. And sometimes, the living don't either. Winter came fast that year. The kind that freezes your breath to your collarbone. We wrapped coffins in thermal blankets, dug slow, tried not to snap the shovels in the frost. Marcus learned how to keep a thermos full of soup. Learned how to find stillness in the cold. One day, he found a bird frozen mid-flight, wings spread, body stiff on the ground. He buried it behind the tool shed without saying a word. "What should we write on the marker?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "Just remember where you put it." That was the thing about this work. It wasn't about the names or dates. It was about the weight you carried and the quiet you left behind. Spring came late. The kind that makes you wonder if the trees forgot how to bloom. But they did. Eventually. And so did I. The thaw brought more than crocuses and mud. It brought a letter. Mailed to the cemetery, addressed to me. Handwritten, blocky script, no return address. Inside was a photo, grainy, sun-bleached, of my father leaning against the Buick, arms slung around the waitress. They were in the desert somewhere. I could tell by the dust and the way the sky looked too big. Taped to the back was a note. "He talked about you more than he let on. Thought you'd want this." No name. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed him, by then I didn't, but because it was proof that he'd existed in more than just the echo of an engine pulling away. I didn't tell Claire. Didn't know how. We'd come to a kind of peace, her and me. Shared memories from opposite shores, building a bridge between them plank by shaky plank. I didn't want to shake it. Instead, I put the photo in a tin box and buried it near the bird Marcus had laid to rest. No marker. Just a notch in the fence post to remind me. That spring was busy. Lots of old deaths and a few young ones. The kind that sat heavy in your chest for days after. One was a boy named Aaron, 15, overdose. His mother came back every morning at sunrise for weeks. Just stood there, lips moving like a hymn. Marcus wanted to talk to her. I told him no. "Sometimes silence is the kindest thing," I said. He didn't agree, not at first. But he watched. Learned. Like I had. Claire called in May. Said Mom had a fall. Nothing broken, but she was slower now, foggier. Wanted to know if I'd come by more. I started visiting Sundays. Brought soup. Sat through commercials and stories she only half remembered. Sometimes she mistook me for him. Said things like, "Why'd you go, Joe?" I let her. Let the past bleed through. Gave her the ending she never got. Once, while washing dishes, she said, "You turned out better than I expected." It was the kindest thing she'd ever said to me. Back at the cemetery, we lost another big oak to lightning. Split clean down the middle, right through plot 57. The coffin wasn't damaged, but it felt like a sign. Like the roots couldn't hold everything anymore. Marcus and I cleared it, limb by limb. He carved a piece into a cross and nailed it to the shed. "Walt would have liked that," I said. He smiled. "I know." The days got longer. Birds louder. We stopped needing thermal blankets. The ground softened, and the dig came easier. I told Marcus he could handle the next burial alone. He looked terrified. "You'll be fine," I said. "Just listen." "To what?" "To everything they don't say." He did it. Clean and proper. Said the words. Lowered the box. Smoothed the sod. After, he sat beside me on the grass, both of us sweating through our shirts. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "Every day," I said. "But you stay." "Yeah. I stay." "Why?" I didn't answer right away. Just looked out at the rows, all that quiet history, all those unfinished conversations. Because someone has to. Summer came with the kind of heat that made your skin feel borrowed. We kept digging. Kept sweating. Kept showing up. By then, the cemetery didn't just feel like my workplace. It felt like a story I was still inside of, a long one, told in quiet chapters, where the plot never moved fast, but every word counted. Marcus asked one morning if we were ever going to plant flowers. "What for?" I asked. "Color. Life. Something besides stone and grass." I shrugged, but the next day he brought marigold seeds and planted them in a corner near the infant plots. Said they were for the ones who never got a birthday. That kid had more heart than he let on. We got a new regular that month, Mrs. Kowalski, widow, sharp as a tack, cane that clicked like a metronome on the gravel. She'd visit her husband's grave every Thursday and bring a thermos of tea. Sometimes she talked to Marcus. Said he reminded her of her grandson. "You're too kind for this work," she told him. "It'll wear you down." Marcus just smiled. "I think it builds something, too." I started to believe that. That maybe all the holes we dug weren't just about endings. Maybe they were invitations. Spaces to put the things we couldn't carry anymore. One day I found Marcus sitting at plot 94, my father's. He didn't know I was behind him. "Must have been a tough guy," he said quietly. "Tough enough to leave," I said. He turned, startled. "Sorry, I wasn't." "It's all right." I joined him. The grass had come back full. The stone was plain. Just a name, 2 dates, and nothing in between. "I never really hated him," I said. "I just didn't get a chance to know who I was without him first." Marcus nodded. "You think he'd be proud of you?" "I don't know. Maybe. Depends on what he thought mattered." We sat in silence for a while. "Do you believe in anything?" he asked. "Like after all this? Afterlife?" "Yeah. Or something." I thought about it. About Walt. About the boy with the pink mittens. About the bird. About the photo buried in the tin box. "I believe in the way grass grows back," I said. "In the way people still come, even years later, just to sit. I believe in the quiet. In the way we remember." Marcus nodded, eyes fixed on the sky. "Yeah. That feels like enough." That week, we held a double burial. Husband and wife, passed within 2 days of each other. Been married 61 years. Their daughter told us they'd held hands even at the end. Marcus said, "Maybe that's what we're all looking for." "Maybe," I said. But deep down, I wasn't sure. I think some of us are just looking for a place to be still. Somewhere to put the ache. After we filled the grave, I looked at Marcus. "You're good at this," I said. "Thanks. You ever think about taking over?" He paused. "You leaving?" "Not yet. But someday." He looked around, hands on his hips, the sun baking dust into our collars. "Yeah," he said. "I think I could do that." We packed up in silence. Another chapter closed. Another space filled. The marigolds were blooming now. Bright and orange and loud against all that gray. And I thought, maybe the job wasn't to dig graves. Maybe it was to make sure what was buried never got forgotten. There's a certain kind of quiet that only comes in autumn. Not silence exactly, leaves still rustle, birds still argue, but a kind of hush, like the whole world's catching its breath. That's how it felt walking into Greenwood that October. The air was crisp, edged with smoke from burning leaves and the bite of coming frost. The marigolds were wilting, curling in on themselves like they knew something we didn't. Marcus had started bringing a journal to work. Said he was trying to write things down, memories, thoughts, things he'd heard while eavesdropping on grief. I didn't pry. Some things grow better when left alone. One Saturday, he handed me a page. No title. Just this. There's a difference between being buried and being forgotten. Dirt covers both, but memory is the shovel that digs us back up. I didn't say anything. Just folded it up and tucked it into my wallet, behind the photo Claire had given me years ago, the one of Dad smiling like he hadn't figured out how to ruin things yet. People came and went, as always. We buried a schoolteacher, a Vietnam vet, a woman who used to bake pies for the firehouse. Each one got a square of land, a marker, and a handful of people left behind trying to figure out how to move forward without tripping over what they'd lost. One day, Claire showed up with a box. "Mom passed," she said. It was sudden, in her sleep. Peaceful. No pain. Just absence. She looked tired, like she'd cried all she could. I didn't say much. Just put my arm around her and walked her to the office. She handed me the paperwork. Cremation. No service. She said she didn't want anyone fussing. Claire said. Just somewhere simple. I picked a plot near the dogwoods. Not far from Dad. Close enough for a kind of reconciliation, but not so close they'd feel forced to speak. Claire and I stood together as we lowered the urn. She never really let go of him, Claire said. No, I said. She just got better at pretending she had. Afterward, we sat on the hood of my truck, drinking burnt diner coffee from styrofoam cups. Claire pulled her sleeves down over her hands the way she used to when we were kids. You ever regret not leaving? She asked. Sometimes. But I don't think I was supposed to. She nodded. You're part of this place. The way the trees are. The stones. You keep it alive. I didn't say it, but I felt it. That maybe I'd stopped being a boy digging holes to forget a man. Maybe I was something else now. A keeper, maybe? A witness. That night I stayed late. The moon hung low, full and silent. I walked the rows, reading names aloud under my breath. Some I knew by heart. Some I never would. Plot 94 was quiet. Just dew on the stone and a faint crease in the grass from where someone had knelt earlier. Maybe Claire. Maybe Marcus. I knelt too. Mom's here now, I said. She's close. Maybe you can try again. The wind picked up, soft and restless. I didn't believe in ghosts. But I did believe in echoes. And in that moment I swore I heard a voice say, "Thank you." I stayed until the chill cut through my jacket. Then I walked back to the shed, where Marcus had left the light on. He was waiting, journal in hand, ready to tell me what he'd seen that day. The first snow came early that year. Heavy, wet, the kind that sticks to your eyelashes and makes the world look cleaner than it really is. Greenwood turned into something holy under all that white, like even the dead got a fresh start. Marcus started showing up in the mornings with fresh biscuits and a thermos of hot cider. Said his mom used to bake them on Sundays, back when things were better. He never talked much about her. I never asked. We dug slow that winter. The frost ran deep. Had to jackhammer through the topsoil some days. But the cold made people kinder. More willing to look you in the eye when they said thank you. One afternoon, I found Marcus fixing a crooked headstone. No service that day, just him, a level, and that stubborn look he got when something felt out of place. You know this one? I asked. No. But someone did. He straightened the stone and brushed the snow off the name like it mattered. It did. He was starting to understand the rules that don't get written down. That night, I dreamed of my father again. Only this time, we were sitting on the hood of the Buick, watching the stars through a cracked windshield. He handed me a socket wrench and said, "It ain't about fixing things, Danny. It's about showing up with the tools anyway." I woke up before I could ask him what he meant. In early January, I got a letter from the city. They wanted to expand the cemetery. Buy up the vacant lots east of Greenwood. Said the growth was good. Said it meant progress. But all I could think about were the roots. The ones Walt told me not to disturb. The ones that held this place together. I told Marcus. "You think they'll do it?" he asked. "Eventually. They always do." We stood at the fence, looking out at the empty fields, the silence. "If they build there," he said, "we'll bury people who never walked these grounds. People who never felt this quiet." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe they'll just bring more stories." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't like it. That week, I started writing again. Nothing fancy. Just notes, dates, names. Moments I didn't want to forget. Like the sound of Mrs. Kowalski's cane on the path. Or the way Claire cried without making a sound. Or the day Marcus planted the marigolds. I didn't know what I was writing it for. Just that it felt like something I owed. To Walt. To myself. To the man who left, and the boy who stayed. That Saturday, Marcus and I stayed late. The sky turned orange, then indigo, then black. We lit a fire in the old drum barrel behind the shed and passed a bottle between us. "I think I'm gonna stay," he said, voice quiet. "Good. I don't know if I believe in anything yet. Not really. You don't have to. But I believe in you. And this place. That's something. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. Passed him the bottle. The fire cracked and hissed. Snowflakes drifted through the smoke. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was digging my way out of something. I felt like I was finally standing still. The cemetery was quiet the day I decided to leave. Not forever. Just long enough to find out who I'd be without a shovel in my hands. I told Marcus over lunch, sitting on the tailgate, peanut butter sandwiches and the hum of cicadas filling in the words I couldn't quite say. I'll keep it going, he said, like he already knew. Walt would have wanted that. No, I said. Walt would have wanted you to do it your way. He smiled. Same thing, isn't it? We walked the grounds that evening. The marigolds were gone now, but he promised to plant more come spring. Said he'd name them after the stories we didn't get to finish. I left him my key to the shed, my work gloves, and a copy of the binder I'd been keeping. Names, layouts, things that only lived in my head until I wrote them down. On the last page I wrote, dig deep. Love deeper. Don't forget to rest. Before I left, I visited the graves one more time. Walt's first. Thanks for the work, I said. And the silence. Then Mom's. You held it together longer than I ever gave you credit for. Then Dad's. I learned more from your absence than I think I would have from your presence. But I wish it had been different. Finally, I walked out to the corner, where I'd buried the photo in the tin box. I didn't dig it up. Just stood there. Let the breeze tell me whatever it needed to. Marcus came to see me off the next morning. You sure you don't want me to drive you? I shook my head. This part I gotta do alone. He handed me a small notebook. What's this? Something I've been keeping. Thoughts. Quotes. Bits of you that got into me. I tucked it in my coat pocket. I'll bring back something worth writing about. You already have. I left Greenwood in a rusted pickup that coughed like an old man and smelled like memory. I didn't have a plan. Just a direction. South. Maybe east. Somewhere I could walk streets where no one knew me as the grave digger, the quiet one, the son of a ghost. The world outside the cemetery felt louder. Faster. But I wasn't afraid of the noise. I learned to carry silence like armor. Every town I passed, I watched the people. Wondered who they'd lost. Wondered who buried them. Sometimes I'd pull over, write things down. A name on a diner receipt. A sentence overheard in a gas station. I kept Marcus's notebook close. Started filling in the blank pages. Weeks passed. Then months. One morning, I found myself in a town that looked like the others. Weathered storefronts, stray cats, church bells. But something in me said, here. Just for a while. I found work at a lumberyard. Quiet, steady. I wrote at night. Walked at dawn. And I missed the graves. Not the death. The care. The weight of remembering. I wrote Marcus a letter. Told him I was okay. That I'd seen 3 churches, 2 baptisms, and 1 wedding where the groom cried like a child. He wrote back. The marigolds are coming in early this year. I named the patch after Walt. I hope that's all right. It was. In time, I'll go back. Not to stay. But to stand among what I helped build. To see if the grass still grows clean, if the stones still stand straight. To watch Marcus teach some kid how to hold a shovel and keep his mouth shut when it matters. And when I do, I'll kneel beside my father's grave, press my hand to the earth, and say, I dug this for you. And I filled it with everything I was. Then I'll rise, turn toward the gate, and walk on. Because I've learned how to leave now. And how to stay, too.